It was just another quiet evening in Yucaipa, California, a suburban community where families gather in strip mall parking lots, where children's laughter carries across playgrounds, where danger feels like something that happened somewhere else. But on this night, in the shadow of fluorescent lights outside a Big Five sporting goods store, the ordinary was shattered. A young mother was brutally attacked. Her 7-month-old baby, ripped from her arms, was gone. In an instant, a small town was thrust into a nightmare that felt like it could come from the darkest corners of a crime thriller. Only this wasn't fiction. This was real, and the clock had already begun to tick. The headlines would capture it in chilling simplicity. Asterisk 7-month. Old kidnapped from Yucaipa. Mother attacked in parking lot. Asterisk, but those words don't tell the whole story. They don't capture the raw panic of a mother fighting to protect her child. They don't capture the chaos that spread across Yucaipa as police swarmed, as Amber Alerts pinged across phones, as the entire community braced itself for the unthinkable. Because when an infant disappears, every second matters. And every second lost is a step closer to tragedy. This is not just a story about a kidnapping. It is a story about innocence colliding with violence, about the desperate lengths a parent will go to save their child, about the haunting questions left in the wake of a crime that shatters lives. And at the center of it all, a baby, just 7 months old, too young to speak, too small to fight back. A baby who became the focus of one of the most urgent manhunts in recent memory. To understand the horror of that night, we need to step back into quiet routines of a young mother in Yucaipa. She was just like so many others, juggling errands, watching her baby grow, trying to balance the ordinary with the extraordinary demands of raising an infant. Her life was not marked by headlines, not marked by danger. It was marked by bottles, lullabies, and the steady heartbeat of motherhood. In her arms, her 7-month-old child, fragile, innocent, still new to this world, still learning to smile, to recognize faces, to hold on tight to tiny toys. A baby who represented everything pure in life. A baby who trusted without question, who needed protection at every moment. Yucaipa itself is a community not known for violence, nestled in San Bernardino County, surrounded by rolling hills and family neighborhoods. It is a place where parents feel safe taking their children to park, where errands at the strip mall don't carry the weight of fear. But this sense of safety, this illusion of normalcy, is what makes what happens so much more terrifying. Because in one blink, the ordinary becomes the unthinkable, and in one desperate moment, everything can be stolen. That evening, the mother pulled into the Big Five sporting goods parking lot. Perhaps it was to pick up an item quickly, perhaps just another errand on a long list. It was not the sort of place you would expect danger to strike. The lot was lit, public, surrounded by other businesses. But predators don't always choose dark alleys. Sometimes they choose the places we let our guard down. Sometimes they hide in plain sight. And that night, they were waiting. The details that followed would send shivers through the community. Because as the mother stepped from her car, she was ambushed. The attack was swift, brutal, and merciless. She fought, because that's what mothers do. But in the struggle, in the chaos, her baby was torn from her arms. And just like that, the child was gone. The kidnapper vanished into the night, leaving a mother bleeding in the cold glow of the parking lot lights, leaving behind only echoes of her screams, and a silence that still haunts Yucaipa. When the first 911 calls came in from the Big Five parking lot, dispatchers could barely comprehend what they were hearing. A mother attacked, her baby stolen, the suspect gone without a trace. Within minutes, Yucaipa law enforcement descended on the scene, their radios alive with urgency, their voices strained with disbelief. This was not just another crime. This was the nightmare every parent fears most. A baby, snatched from safety and carried into the unknown. Officers found the mother shaken, bloodied, still in shock. Between sobs and gasps for air, she tried to tell them everything. The attack, the stranger's face, the moment her baby was ripped away. Her words tumbled out in fragments, but one fact was clear. The child was gone. Time was already against them. For every passing minute, the chances of finding an abducted infant alive began to slip. Within hours, an Amber Alert was issued. Phones buzzed across California with the haunting words, kidnapping in Yucaipa, infant taken, suspect at large. Drivers on the highway glanced at overhead signs flashing urgent descriptions. Neighbors stepped out of their homes, scanning streets and alleyways, hoping for a glimpse of the child. Helicopters circled above, their spotlights cutting through the dark. Every resource was mobilized, patrol units, detectives, federal liaisons, because in cases like this, there is no second chance. The mother's account became the first thread investigators could pull. Who attacked her? Was it someone watching, waiting for her to arrive? Or was it random? A predator striking by chance? The questions multiplied as quickly as the fear. And beneath it all was the cruel ticking of the clock. Law enforcement officials knew the truth. In infant abductions, the first 24 hours are everything. Beyond that, the odds plummet. And so the race began, a frantic search through the night, against time, against fear, and against the chilling possibility that whoever had taken this baby might already have vanished forever. By morning, the search had intensified into one of the largest coordinated efforts Yucaipa had seen in years. Officers went door to door, knocking on homes, questioning neighbors, searching garages, sheds, and abandoned lots. Every car leaving town was eyed with suspicion. The Amber Alert kept flashing across highways and phones, but still, no sign of the baby. Anxiety rippled through the community. Parents clutched their children tighter. Strangers eyed one another warily. Something unspeakable had entered their quiet town. Investigators focused on the parking lot itself. Security cameras were pulled, reviewed frame by frame. Witnesses were tracked down, asked to recount every detail of what they saw. One recalled hearing a sharp scream. Another remembered a man moving quickly through the lot, carrying something bundled in his arms. These fragments painted a haunting picture, but none of it led to the baby's immediate rescue. Each hour without answers twisted the knife deeper. Detectives zeroed in on the mother's testimony. She had been attacked so suddenly, she barely had time to fight back. But she remembered certain things: hands grabbing her, the smell of sweat and leather, the sound of boots pounding pavement as the abductor ran. Could this have been planned? Was she being watched? Or was she simply the victim of a predator who happened upon the perfect opportunity? Investigators weighed every possibility. The case was teetering between hope and despair. Then came a chilling discovery. Just beyond town limits, searchers found an item that shouldn't have been there. The baby's blanket crumpled in the dirt. Its tiny pattern, once a symbol of comfort, now stood as a grim reminder of the stakes. To law enforcement, it meant two things: confirmation that the abductor had fled on foot at least part of the way, and proof that the baby was still out there, alive or otherwise. The blanket was logged, bagged, sent for forensic testing. But in that moment, the sight of it sent a shiver through everyone who stood there. The horror was no longer abstract. It was real, and it was escalating. The FBI was brought in, adding specialized profilers to the case. They warned investigators to prepare for two parallel paths, one that might lead to a miraculous recovery and one that could end in tragedy. Their advice was blunt: follow every lead, chase every sighting, and never assume this abductor would simply give up the child. Whoever had taken that baby, they said, was dangerous, and dangerous people rarely stop on their own. As investigators sifted through the chaos of tips and false leads, one call stood out. A witness claimed they had seen a suspicious vehicle idling near the Big Five parking lot just minutes before the attack. It wasn't just the timing that drew attention. It was the description: a dark sedan, older model, with mismatched hubcaps. Detectives quickly pulled DMV records, cross-referencing similar vehicles in the region. For the first time since the abduction, the case had a tangible lead. But then, something unexpected happened. As officers canvassed neighborhoods, a resident stepped forward with information that changed the trajectory of the investigation. The man said he recognized the baby's blanket from the news, and that just hours earlier, he had seen a figure hurrying into the tree line not far from where the blanket was later found. The figure carried something small, wrapped tight. The sight had unsettled him, but only when the Amber Alert broke did he connect the dots. Investigators now had a potential path, a possible escape route to trace. The FBI's behavioral analyst stepped in, constructing a profile of the abductor. They believed this wasn't a random crime of opportunity, but a calculated act. The attacker seemed to know how to strike quickly, incapacitate the mother, and vanish without leaving clear evidence. Their conclusion was chilling. Whoever took this baby had likely fantasized or prepared for it before. This wasn't chaos. It was control. And then came the breakthrough. Security footage from a nearby gas station, time-stamped less than 10 minutes after the abduction, showed a dark sedan speeding away from the area. Though the plates were obscured, the make and model aligned with the witness description. For investigators, this was the moment the fog began to lift. They weren't chasing shadows anymore. They were chasing someone real, someone traceable. With that footage in hand, law enforcement issued a renewed public appeal. Anyone who had seen the vehicle, anyone who knew of a dark sedan with mismatched wheels, was urged to come forward. Tip lines lit up, some credible, others not. Still, the investigation was moving, momentum building. The abductor's window of invisibility was closing. With the grainy gas station footage and the witness account of the mismatched sedan, investigators began the hunt in earnest. Detectives traced every registered vehicle that matched the description, knocking on doors, asking questions, and checking alibis. Each interview brought them closer, narrowing the field of suspects from hundreds to just a handful. The chase was on, and time was the enemy. The mother, still recovering from the attack, gave her statement again and again, searching her memory for details. She recalled the sharp chemical smell on her attacker's jacket, the rasp in their breathing, and the way they seemed oddly calm, almost rehearsed. Those details were passed along to the FBI's behavioral unit, who noted that such composure suggested planning, not panic. Whoever had taken the baby wasn't improvising. They were executing a plan. Meanwhile, officers spread across Yucaipa, combing through back roads, storage units, motels, and wooded areas. Helicopters circled overhead. The sound of search dogs echoed in the canyons. Neighbors who had once felt safe now locked their doors tight, glancing over their shoulders as speculation ran wild. People whisper about strangers spotted in town the week before, about cars parked too long on quiet streets, about the unsettling thought that someone close, someone familiar, could be responsible. Then came another breakthrough. A tipster, shaken but determined, reported seeing a dark sedan abandoned near a dirt road on the outskirts of town. When deputies arrived, they found it just as described. Engine cold, interior empty, the faint scent of cigarettes lingering inside. A child's pacifier lay on the backseat floor. Forensic teams moved immediately, swabbing for DNA, lifting fingerprints, and collecting fibers. It was the first concrete sign that the baby had indeed been in that vehicle. Every detail mattered now. Surveillance tapes were pulled from nearby businesses, capturing glimpses of the car's route. Phone towers provided data, showing which devices had pinged the area at the critical time. Piece by piece, the digital net tightened around the suspect. Law enforcement believed they were closing in. The only question that haunted every officer, every volunteer, every family member was this: would they reach the baby in time? It was late in the evening when the call came in. Deputies had tracked a suspicious phone ping to a rundown motel off the interstate, a place known for transient guests and cash-only rentals. The car abandoned in the canyon had left a trail, and the digital footprint pointed here. Within minutes, unmarked units surrounded the building, headlights off, radio silent. The air was thick with tension as officers prepared to breach. Inside one of the rooms, the sound of a baby's muffled cries pierced the stale air. Neighbors in adjoining units had reported the faint noise earlier in the night, not realizing its significance. Now, with officers positioned at every exit, the command was given. The door burst open and chaos erupted. The suspect, startled but defiant, tried to flee through the back window, but officers were faster. Within seconds, they were on the ground, handcuffed, shouting, thrashing, desperate to escape. And there, in the corner of the dim room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of gasoline and smoke, was the baby, alive, crying, terrified, but alive. An officer scooped the child into their arms, rushing them outside into a flood of flashing red and blue lights. The scene that unfolded was surreal. Neighbors emerged from their rooms, gawking, gasping, some crying with relief. Paramedics checked the child immediately, confirming what everyone had prayed for. Unharmed, miraculously untouched by the violence that had unfolded. As the suspect was shoved into the back of a cruiser, the mother arrived at the scene. Still bruised, still trembling. She collapsed to her knees a moment she saw her baby, arms outstretched, voice breaking as she cried out their name. The reunion was raw, overwhelming, and unforgettable. Officers who had seen countless horrors in their careers admitted later that they choked back tears in that moment. Against impossible odds, a nightmare had not ended in tragedy. It had ended in survival. The days that followed were a blur of headlines and camera flashes. The story of the baby kidnapped in Yucaipa, rescued from a motel room after a frantic manhunt, gripped not only Southern California, but the entire nation. News anchors replayed the footage of the mother clutching her child over and over, framing it as a miracle, a rare ending in a world where so many of these stories close with grief instead of relief. Prosecutors wasted no time. The suspect was charged with kidnapping, assault with intent to cause great bodily harm, and child endangerment. In court, the district attorney called it an act of calculated violence that nearly destroyed an entire family. The judge, speaking directly to the defendant at arraignment, declared, "This community will not tolerate such acts of terror against the innocent." As the trial moved forward, testimony revealed chilling details. The attack in the Big Five parking lot had not been random. Investigators testified that the suspect had been seen loitering in the area for days, watching, waiting for the right moment. One officer stated, "This was premeditated. They weren't just looking for an opportunity. They were hunting." The defense, however, painted a different picture of desperation, of instability, of a mind clouded by addiction and poor choices. But the jury was unmoved. After less than a day of deliberation, the verdict came back, guilty on all counts. The mother sobbed quietly in the courtroom, clutching a photo of her child. The sentence was handed down swiftly, life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the family, the verdict brought closure, but not peace. The scars of that night would never truly heal. The mother later told reporters, "I can't explain what it feels like to have your child ripped from you. Every day, I thank God they were brought back, but I still wake up at night hearing that cry." Her words cut deep, a reminder that even in survival, trauma lingers. And for the community of Yucaipa, the case left its mark. Parents held their children closer. Stores increased security. People who had once felt safe in the quiet suburban streets now glanced over their shoulders in parking lots, haunted by the knowledge that horror could appear without warning, in the most ordinary of places. When the headlines faded and the courtroom emptied, what remained was a story that was never just about crime and punishment. It was about fragility, about how quickly an ordinary night can fracture into nightmare. A mother, a baby, a parking lot outside a store, that was all it took. No warning, no time to prepare. And for everyone who followed the case, it became impossible not to wonder, if it could happen there, could it happen here? Criminologists often remind us that abductions by strangers are rare, vanishingly rare. But statistics mean nothing when the sound of one child's cry reverberates across an entire community. When the image of a mother beaten and broken in a parking lot is burned into collective memory, fear spreads faster than reason, and in Yucaipa, that fear turned into vigilance. The sheriff, speaking at a press conference after the verdict, chose his words carefully. This was a tragedy, yes, but it was also a triumph. Law enforcement worked together. The public came forward with tips, and a child is alive today because of it. That's what we hold on to. And yet, for all the relief, the horror of what might have been still shadows a narrative. The difference between reunion and loss was measured in hours, perhaps minutes. For the mother, the legacy is more personal. She now speaks to parent groups about awareness and safety. Her message is raw but unwavering. Never believe it can't happen to you. Trust your instincts. Protect your babies. Those who hear her say it's impossible not to feel her pain, but also her strength. She lived the unthinkable, and she survived. True crime often leaves us with questions. Why this victim? Why that moment? Why such cruelty in a world that should cradle its children? And this case is no different. It lingers, not only in the pages of court transcripts, but in the silence of late nights when parents double-check the locks on their doors and listen for the sound of their child breathing in the dark. Because if the story teaches us anything, it's that the line between innocence and horror is thinner than we want to admit. The story of the Yucaipa kidnapping is not just a story of one family, one suspect, or one crime. It's a mirror reflecting our deepest fears and our fiercest hopes. The baby who was taken came home. The mother who fought to the last breath saw justice served. And in that, there is both devastation and redemption, a reminder that while the world can turn cruel in an instant, courage can still light the way through the darkness.